Hello and welcome to the show. Today we have finally got a Forza 7 relay race, or a couple of relay races for you. I know this has been a much requested thing. I've wanted to film one of these for quite some time. However, Forza knows. It knows when we go to film one of these and actively tries to sabotage us, it seems. We've not had very much luck at all and wasted a good few evenings trying to get this to work. However, we did finally get everything to stay connected and work long enough to actually film something. So, for those of you who might not have seen one of these before, this is how they work. There are 4 teams, each with 4 cars. Now, those cars, we're keeping things simple for this one because we've had so many troubles. The cars are going to be in A class, B class, C class, and D class. Each car completes 1 lap of a circuit. They then hand over to the next car. They complete a lap, and so on and so forth. Now, your tactics come in to all of this in what order you send your cars out, and of course what car you use. If everybody sends out their slow cars first, well, that group of cars will be battling one another, potentially slowing each other down. You send out your fast car first when everybody's in slow cars. You can run your fast car in clean air. However, you will have slower cars to finish off the end of the race. It does make for a very interesting tactical battle, and this is more about the order of cars and the driving than the actual physical building, with it being a set class. Our first race was to tackle the full layout of Virginia. The Chrome team would be sending out their A-class car. We would have an interesting car selection. 2 camper vans, a 2 CV, and an AMC Javelin. Orange team were going for the oddball cars, which is always a scary and dangerous strategy. We were sending out our C-class camper van first. Black team were sending out a D-class CRX, while red team would have an A-class Monaro. However, a poor getaway would drop the Monaro to the back. And now the Monaro has to do a lot of work. The plan of run the fast car in clean air early on wasn't working, and as the Monaro dips a wheel on the grass, it will continue to go a little bit awry for the red team here. Now, orange, black, while we're still sending out slower cars, were thankfully running in clean air with this fairly varied start to the race. Yeah, we were both able to run in clean air. Chrome team were also utilising their fastest car first and staying out of trouble. The Skyline having no real competition. As I said, you want to be able to run your cars in clean air. It is so vitally important because an A-class car can be held up through 2 or 3 corners, potentially even by a C-class car, for example, and that'll cost it overall lap time. The downside, as I mentioned earlier, with this strategy is Chrome cars are only going to get slower as they go, and that means they might not have anything to defend with later on. As the Chrome car heads across the line, they would send out their C-class car next. Now, they have got a very big lead. Red team that would have had a comparable car with a poor start and a couple of little errors from the Monaro would be dropping a fair way back. So the poor Holden had a lot of work to be doing. He would retake the CRX even with a couple of off-track adventures and was trying his best to chase down that camper van, although heading around the final corner. The camper van is a little bit wide. The Monaro is a little bit more. Ranny Crossing keeps his foot down, still trying his best to make up some time as they go for a handover. Now, red team were using quite a lot of their fast cars early on, going on to their B-class car next. We were sending out our D-class, my 2C VTEC. Now, it is not a bad D-class car. It works at some circuits. It really doesn't work at some other ones. But yeah, we were kind of going for the entertaining things. Now, I was never going to be able to fight off a B-class car, let's face it. I had a go. Again, this is about slowing down red team as much as possible. If I can hold it side by side through a couple of corners, just shove the nose up the inside into a corner, make him lose half a second because he has to change his line, that'll have a knock-on effect later on. Now, there is also a case of if I fight too hard, I actually slow myself down. So sometimes it is better off letting the car go. Sometimes it's better off to maybe try and slow them down a little bit. Basically, you want to be able to slow down your opposition without slowing yourself down too much. That's sort of the general gist of everything here. Black team were gradually getting faster with their cars. They were going in the sort of reverse order. Their C-Class Corvette, that was trying to chase down me. And as strategies, while we'd sent our cars out in slightly different orders, as we were coming up towards the line here, both our team and black team would have used the same amount of cars. So we had the same vehicles left. I was desperately trying to keep ahead of the Corvette. Now, I have good acceleration in the 2C VTEC. However, my top speed is severely lacking, and around Virginia, it was starting to show a little bit as the Corvette would come sweeping past. A very, very close changeover between us. Now, as we headed into the next round, again, we continued with our similar but slightly split strategies. We would send out our A-Class, yes, A-Class camper van. I'm not sure why we thought this was a good idea, I'm going to be honest, but that's what we were going with. While Black Team would send out their B-Class Firebird, which was monstrously fast. Chrome still continued to lead by a massive, massive margin, but they were sending out slower and slower cars, which means we were going to be reeling them in. Likewise, while Red had handed over in second place, this pair are now going to start catching. I think they have their D-Class Elan. Indeed, they do. D-Class Lotus Elan against an A-Class camper van. Now, the Volkswagen is not very good through the corners at all. In fact, it is so slow through the corners that the B-Class Firebird was keeping up. It is very, very fast when it comes to the straights. However, as you can see, it is a rather terrifying thing. Of course, I did not see while we were filming this. I was parked up, out of the way. Just how unbelievably terrifying the camper van was to corner, and eventually, well, the camper would go for a little bit of a wander across the grass. And this was bad news for us. The camper needed to give our final car as big a gap as possible over Black, because they were going to have their A-Class car to finish off. That Firebird was now fighting with the Elan. I mean, the Elan was putting up a good fight for a D-Class car, but in the end, it's never going to have the speed of these sorts of monsters. And sure enough, the camper's going to come soaring past, and the camper is really in that Firebird, but then we've got wibbly-wobbly times for some more corners here, and the camper is not really close enough here to having a look. I mean, at the moment we still can't see Chrome. Chrome was massively far ahead. There you can just about see the Chrome car ahead. I think the Chrome were using their D-Class car at this point as well. The Chrome car heading towards the line. Red were pretty much out of this, as they had just a C-Class car to go to finish off, and all the rest of us were in faster cars anyway. Our camper comes flying towards the line, still desperately trying to reel in that Firebird. Chrome have already changed over as we get a changeover. Our B-Class Javelin gets a very, very good start, managing to get off the line quicker than the A-Class BMW. In fact, the Javelin has got more power than the BMW. However, it doesn't have much grip. Well, much grip at all. And there is no lead for the Javelin. It's only thanks to a very, very good launch that the Javelin even got ahead of the BMW. So trying to fend off from that Beamer, not quite. It worked for a couple of corners, but in the end, the M3 just far too good when it came to the turns. And now came the big question. Could the M3 reel in that Chrome car? Chrome had been running completely uncontested pretty much throughout this entire race, despite our orange team doing our best to battle with the black team. The M3, having got clear, was, as you could imagine, flying. It's trying to hunt down another B-Class car as we head towards the end of the lap. There are just a few more corners to go for that Chrome car to hold on. He's got to defend as hard as he can. The problem is there is a straight towards the finish line. Now, if you have a massive power build B-Class car, you might be able to fend off an A-Class for that acceleration towards the line. The problem is for the fair lady, it was too much. Well, I say too much focus towards grip. You'll make up lap time in different places. It didn't have the power of the drag race towards the line. The M3 is just that little bit too fast. A very, very close finish indeed. In fact, one of the closest relay races we've done. Certainly, Red Team were in trouble down in fourth, but very close between us top three. Our A-Class camper, while very, very quick in places, was just too difficult to drive, and that kind of put us in trouble. A great comeback from Black Team to actually get a victory in that one. For our second race, we would head to the Mugello circuit. This, a nasty track. A nasty track, especially for our Wobble Wagon Brigade. Now, we were going to be trying the send out the fast car first strategy. Send out the ridiculously fast camper van, try and get it to run in clean air. We kind of didn't want the fast camper vans getting stuck in battles. That was the theory, because it's very difficult to drive as it is, and if the camper has to try and work its way up through the pack, it's probably going to lose a lot of time overtaking. So if we can run them in clean air, they stand the best chance of at least making the most of their performance. Problem was, the camper van doesn't really like corners, and there are a lot around Mugello. I mean, it really doesn't like corners as far as the, well, B-Class Firebird was keeping up. In fact, Red Team was sending their B-Class Camaro around as well, and that wasn't that far down either. Yeah, a lot of kind of point and squirt tracks, the camper van would have beaten very fast, but here we got a lot of these sort of long corners, although the Camaro does make a bit of a mistake off on the gravel there to lose some time. Yeah, a lot of these long corners were problematic for the camper van. Now again, Chrome were going for the complete opposite strategy here. Chrome were sending out their low-class cars. It was their D-Class car that went first. Now, again, it's going to have a lot of work to do in the later stages. The camper van's still up on two wheels, but they're running around in clean air here, because the camper van's busy battling with the Firebird as they head around the final corner. The Pontiac has a go up the inside, cannot quite make it work, does get the camper a little bit sideways as they run out of this final corner, head up towards the line. Now the camper's got the straight line speed here, the camper's got the acceleration, and it will pull away a little bit, but it's not the largest gap. It's not as larger a gap as we might have liked as we transition on to our second round. A little bit of lag from the replay. We're sending out our second. We're getting the camper vans out of the way early on in all of this. Again, us and Black Team going for slight diverging strategies. Black Team were sending out their A-Class. Now, again, trying to get that little bit of clean air, and sure enough does manage to round up the camper van after this first couple of corners. Whether we cost the BMW a huge amount of time, perhaps not so much. Fairly straightforward pass. Now the race was sort of split a little bit in two at this particular moment in time. Red Team were going for a more middle of the road strategy. They sent out their B-Class car, they were now sending out their C-Class car. They were, again, trying to run in clean air. They were sort of alternating with Chrome. Chrome had sent a D-Class and now they were with a B-Class car. So these two teams further back were running in clean air with their respective cars. They weren't fighting anybody particularly at this moment in time. Now they were likely to be catching perhaps a little bit up towards us Orange Team, but yeah, it was fairly, the second stint was fairly, well, say trouble-free, fairly uneventful in many ways. Black Team would hand over the lead to their D-Class CRX. It'll be a fairly sizable lead at this stage of the race because they'd use their two fastest cars first. So, naturally, yeah, they were going to have a pretty sizable lead. Some cold rear tyres get the CRX very, very sideways through that first corner. But again, much like we saw at Virginia, this now meant Black Team were going to be finishing the race with slower cars. And the risk with that is if there is a sprint towards the finish line, then you might have some trouble. We would hand over in second place, sending my 2C VTEC on its way. Chrome Team would hand over in third. The B-Class Fairlady Z had managed to overhaul the Red Team just with that sprint towards the line. Chrome was sending out their C-Class Fiat. Red were sending out their D-Class Elan. And again, this was very much a case of everybody was managing to run strategies that didn't have too much overlap here. Outside of the kind of opening stint, there was, yeah, a lot of let's try and keep our cars in as clean air as we possibly can to make the most, which, as I said, is what you want to do. We normally end up with some people not having quite played it right, because you often sort of set your cars up on the start, you know, with your lines and so on, and find out, you realise that you've got more competition than you had hoped for. That's the way it goes. Black continued to lead, and again, this was another large lead for the Black Team. Very reminiscent of what we had seen at Virginia. It was closing in with some of the cars behind, but they would hand over to their C-Class car in the lead. But that does mean that the poor Corvette is going to have two A-Class cars and a B-Class car trying to chase it down. Again, big lead going on here, but it is a lot of an ask for a C-Class car to fend off that. I was doing my best to try and slow Chrome down. I knew we were in a little bit of trouble at this stage, We had a B-class car to go. Both Chrome and Red Team had A-class cars. I needed to have been further ahead, quite frankly. I did what I could. I did all I could with the 2C VTEC, but it was not going to be enough. Chrome would get past on the run to the line. Now, I would hand over to my teammate with a half-decent gap over Red, but, I mean, it's still a tall order. It's still a tall order trying to get that Javelin to fend off from an A-class car, and Chrome now had the task of trying to chase down the lead. In fact, all of these teams had the task of trying to chase down the leader. We all had faster cars going. It was whether that black team had managed to build up a large enough lead early on. And as we head around sort of the halfway stage of the lap here, the Corvette is still looking pretty comfortable. Sure, you can see the cars in the distance, but you've got to bear in mind the speeds difference between these cars, the class difference between these cars is now pretty high. The Corvette can't afford to make any mistakes. A little off, a little trip across the gravel, and you are going to be done for. The same can be said for the Skyline. That Nissan is very, very quick, but one small mistake, hit a curb wrong, get the car on two wheels somewhere even, and you can lose heaps and heaps of time. Still, that Nissan is closing in relentlessly. Now, the Skyline is about the only real threat that the Corvette has. You can see our Javelin, the Monaro in the background are busy fighting one another. The Corvette a little bit wide, but doesn't end up on the gravel. It's now down towards the final corner here. The Corvette can't get it stopped. The Corvette's wide of the apex. The Skyline would fire his car up the inside. At the end of the day, that little mistake, I don't think really cost Black Team the win. Even if the Corvette had held it, the Skyline's going to have the acceleration, and the Skyline would chase down the Chevrolet to take a victory for the Chrome Team. However, Black Team would hold on to a second place. The battle for third would go down to the wire as well. The Monaro desperately looking for a way past the Javelin. Again, an A-class car versus a B-class car. Our Javelin had some 800 horsepower. It's not a slow car when it comes to the straights here, but it is quite difficult to get through the corners. The Javelin's out wide onto the gravel. The Monaro having to go the long way as they head towards this final turn, is able to get across both, running a little bit wide. In the end, though, that Holden just too fast. The Javelin threw everything at it, but it was not quite going to be enough. The Monaro would take the third place. We would have to settle for fourth in what would now become our closest, I think, relay race between all 4 teams. We had some really, really close results in this. Some really, really close results. Our rather bonkers car selection on Orange Team might not quite have worked in our favour. It did make things exciting. It did. It really did make for some excellent relay races. I think perhaps that A-class camper van was too A-class camper van was too difficult to drive through the turns. If it had been a lot more of a acceleration-based tracks we'd gone to, it might have stood a chance. And my 2CV, while good again at short circuits, these longer circuits ran out of speed for a D-class car, might have been a little bit costly. But we gave it a go. We gave it a go. There were some excellent strategies in over the course of the 2 races. Both were won actually in exactly the same way, just different teams tried it. Running the faster cars at the end was kind of the way to go. I do wonder perhaps if Black Team hadn't been slowed down with their battles with our cars early on. You know, the first lap we definitely held up admittedly we were holding up a B-class Trans Am, which is ultimately where we ended up losing the race with. But if we hadn't held up the B-class Trans Am, I wonder if they would have had a big enough lead to make that strategy work. Possibly. Quite possibly, because it wasn't a huge gap between them and Chrome, but you'd still have an A-class car chasing down a C. So, yeah, definitely the run the faster cars at the end of the race was the strategy to be on in all of this. As ever, thoroughly enjoyed these slightly different, very tactical battles that we have going on, and I'm very glad Forza actually let us film this. There was going to be a third race, but then everything gave up. So, yeah, we got it done, and relay races are excellent fun. That, though, is going to be it for this video. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, goodbye.